Hi, and welcome to what we're calling the FPL Stats Fix with me, Tom Campbell. You can find me on Twitter at UtterlyTC, and this video is being brought to you in association with FantasyFootballFix.com. Just a really quick backstory here. So I worked with the FantasyFootballFix.com folks last season, doing some podcasts, and it was exciting initially. Had a bit of a tough year there and didn't end up taking part in the game last season. So that kind of got put on the back burner for a while there. And you know what? I'm back and playing this season. So the guys have said to me, why don't we give video streaming or video recording a go and see whether or not this is kind of more to people's liking. And it gives me the opportunity to play around with the different tools that Fix have available and sort of demonstrate them live on screen and show how I go about, doing my analysis. So what I tend to do normally is a whole bunch of analysis based on eye test observations on Match of the Day. That's how this thing started. And I tweet those out on my Twitter account once I've watched that, normally on a Sunday morning. And the idea in this video is to basically just see whether or not those eye test observations are backed up in the stats, which we can take a look at using some of the features on the Fix website. I'm using the desktop browser today, but the app is super helpful as well. So that's going to be the plan. If we've got time at the end, I'll also go in and take a little look at some of the statistical tables as well and have a play with those and just see if there's anything that catches my eye. So yeah, it's stats heavy. Hopefully this is why you're here. And if you like the video, give it a like, get your comments in, and hopefully subscribe to the channel as well, and we can see whether or not this is something which I can do ongoing. So the idea is to basically look at the notes that I took from the weekend's fixtures in relation to Match of the Day. I don't tend to do them for Match of the Day 2 because primarily those games have been broadcast live in the UK, so highlights don't really give you anything additional there, and people tend to have watched those matches in full. But what I'm going to do is dive into the match stats feature here within the Fix Stats suite of tools and go back to look at game week 5, and I'm just going to see what my notes were for each of the games and see how they compare to what we see in terms of the statistical output for those given matches. So the first one that was broadcast was the Liverpool game. If you looked at this in isolation only from a score perspective, a 3-0 home victory for Liverpool is not something you'd really pay too much attention to, I guess. But actually it was a lot tighter than the scoreline suggested. I think Liverpool certainly good value for the win. But there was a lot to like about Palace's performance, actually. It was a tighter match than 3-0 suggested, I guess backed up there by the XG stats as well. So first thing to look at was Edouard. I thought Edouard, when he came on, and this was his second appearance for Palace off the bench, he came on and obviously hauled a load of points in his debut. Would have been pushing for a start, I would have thought, but he came off the bench again. So Fix gives you their touch heat map as a default. And bear in mind, if we just scroll down here, we can have a little look at the minutes played. And Edouard, it's a 25-minute cameo there. So these stats are being achieved in a short amount of time, and it's quite impressive actually. He played right on the shoulder of the last man. 2 shots in 25 minutes away at Anfield is impressive. Average position, central left, kind of as you would expect. And there's quite a lot to like about him, I think, actually. If I take a little look at his price here, 6.5 million, sort of in that budget third striker bracket, I guess, and that might be something that we all look to if the temptation to get Ronaldo and Lukaku into the squads become too much to completely disregard, then you might be looking at these sorts of players, or this sort of price point, I should say. Let's have a little look at Palace's upcoming fixtures. A couple of home games up first. We know that their home support is what they rely on. Nice Newcastle home fixture as well, and Wolves as well. So the home fixtures are looking tasty. So I liked his performance actually, albeit in limited minutes, and that would be something to bear in mind. Liverpool obviously were missing Trent, Alexander-Arnold, and Andy Robertson in this game. Tsimikas came in and did well. He's proving to be bit of a quandary for owners at the moment in that he blocks that third player for Liverpool, and is a secondary option to Andy Robertson when he comes in. If he's getting clean sheets and opportunities to impress attacking wise, then it's one to think about as well. I did think Milner did a great job on Wilf Zaha. He really did silence him, and Zaha had looked good in the previous game, so I wasn't super impressed by Zaha, but it was more because of the great defensive work that James Milner did on him, operating at right back in Trent's absence. So, one shot and 51 touches isn't anything to get too excited about, really. But it was a tough day for him. Gallagher is the other player that we're kind of interested in. That's a nice average position for a budget midfielder. He is. Let's take a little look at his price right now. So, it's a 2-pointer, but the 90 minutes away at Anfield, still 5.6 million, and we've looked at those fixtures as well, is a nice return, is a nice option, I should say, actually, and remains a nice option. Don't think people should panic. He was still on some set pieces, and still tried to fashion some chances, actually. So just want to have a little look at the attempted assists. You can see Tsimikas there. Really interesting option. Gallagher, third highest in terms of attempted assists, or joint, I should say, with a bunch of other players on too. But I don't think there's any panic there. I still think Gallagher's a player I'd recommend. Didn't feature loads in the highlights, but still a player I like, and he did fine in what was a tough away assignment there as well. Diogo Jota was the other one that sprung out. This is fine. This is a good mixed attacking heat map, I guess. Plenty of touches going on inside the penalty area as well. 4 shots is absolutely fine. It's good, I would say, particularly for a player at that price. And look at the quality of that chance. That was a volley that he put over the bar, and it was a really fantastic chance. 0.61 on the XG kind of reflects that as well. Didn't happen for him. Maybe that's the downside of the premium players of Sadio Mane and Mo Salah. They did return their chances. Maybe that's the trade-off there. So a frustrating return for Jota owners, definitely. But one of those, right? He had, if you'd said to him he was going to have 4 shots, 3 of them being inside the penalty area and one of them being an XG of 0.61, and that's all you knew beforehand, you would have gone for that. So yeah, just a bit unfortunate for his owners there. Still going to be a tough hold, I think, longer term for people if they get too frustrated by that. Player who did look good, again, I think, is Virgil van Dijk. So that's his one shot from the game. Average position is kind of irrelevant here, but look at the passes that he completed in that game and attempted. It was just noticeable to me that he's still that attacking threat, and I was interested, if we look at the bonus point system on the table of data that you get at the bottom of each of these matches, kind of no surprise there to see Van Dijk right at the top there. So, a 12-point return, no goal in that as well. Possibly flying a little bit under the radar. There are so many good options from a sort of more expensive price point in the defence. For Chelsea, for example, Man City, we know are a strong defensive team, of course. And Tsimikas is blocking for the third option. But it wouldn't surprise me if Virgil van Dijk had a massive season. Let's have a little look at his past seasons. He has gone over 200 points before. I mean, that's a real benchmark for a player having a fantastic season. So might just be something to keep an eye on there in terms of that third option there from Liverpool. Tough to get in at 6.6 million. But hey, just something that stood out. He was a threat from set pieces, and I think we'll continue to get a lot of points for his owners as well if they can shoehorn him into their squads. But yeah, nothing to panic about for Palace. They played well. Difficult away match, and nice upcoming fixtures. In fact, I'm just gonna take a little look. If I look at the within the predictive stats suite, we can have a little look here at the fixture analyzer and just have a little look and see how Palace are predicted. I tend to go for a 4-game week period, so let's go 6 through 9 rather than 6 through 11. and take a little look how they're looked. So this is attack difficulty. Let's have a little look at. Yeah, I think attack's probably more where you would focus, and they're reasonably well rated there from the Fix algorithm, with the Birmingham and Leicester home games up next, an away match against a sort of improved or more resolute Arsenal, and then a nice home fixture against Newcastle. So yeah, they look like a decent option. Edouard and certainly Gallagher would be the ones to look at. So next on my list was Norwich. Norwich's home game against Watford. And yeah, the scoreline I think was pretty indicative of how the match played out in terms of the outcome. Watford were good value for the win. I know that Timu Pukki found his way into some people's teams, especially those who've played their wild card, as a kind of means by which to complete that front three from a budget perspective. And look, he returned, he took it well, and did have a good second chance that he blazed over as well. But from Norwich's confidence has got to be super low. It's 15 Prem defeats on the spin under Farke, and I think they're becoming a team to just target in terms of against them from an attacking perspective, and I'm not expecting them to score many goals either. So yeah, it was a nice finish from Pukki, but I didn't particularly like their performance offensively, and of course we know that defensively they are terrible. Whereas I think the Watford front three, and there you can see them all mentioned here, Dennis, Sarr and King respectively, they were really impressive actually. And I say front three, obviously from an FPL perspective, Ismaila Sarr operates in the midfield. So I'm just going to take a little look at their average positions to make that point actually. Let's do them individually. So Sarr, you can see operating on the right-hand side of that attack, really nice and advanced. If we look at Dennis, who is the equivalent on the left, slightly wider, and Josh King playing through the middle, sort of makes the point. But Sarr is obviously operating as a midfielder, and consequently will get more points for a goal, potential additional clean sheet point as well, should Watford keep any, which isn't that likely, I would venture. But they looked like a good cohesive unit. I thought they played well together and will threaten teams. Yes, they played a dire defence in this particular fixture, but for what it was worth, they played well together. And I think if we have a little look at Sarr's return there, 15 points is impressive, and his price point now, and this will be a recurrent theme I think throughout this video, is this kind of lower midpoint price midfielders is going to be an area which we all target and all look to, because there are so many powerhouse expensive players in the game that we're all excited by. You're going to have your make weights in there, and Ismaila Sarr did impress. That is a nice upcoming fixture as well, isn't it? So we just take a look at the upcoming fixtures for Watford. Leeds' defence we know is porous, to put it in a nice way. Newcastle similarly have given up tons of opportunities as well. It stiffens after that, but if you wanted that next, if that's going to be your I guess price point from which you're going to jump on and jump off potentially, then Ismaila Sarr's next two fixtures are exciting. And similarly from an attacking perspective, Josh King is a player we've seen hop around the Prem recently. We know him from Bournemouth and the ill-fated stint at Everton as well. But he's still a player that's relevant, I think, at this at 5.5 million. Has to be considered, right? So he had a good game. Massive differential as well, with 0.6% ownership in live teams as well, which is something to look out for as well. You'd expect that with a Watford attacker. And he played the 90, whereas Dennis got hooked just after 70 minutes. A little bit cheaper though, so if your budget's already coming into question, that might be an option there. And it was just that as a trio, they looked like they were working well together. Admittedly, again, we do need to caveat that with the fact that they were playing Norwich, who can't defend. Anyway, the other player who looked impressive to me was Danny Rose. So I'm going to keep Dennis's heat map here, or average position, to make this point. And Danny Rose, you can see, is not operating that far, wasn't operating that far behind him in this particular setup. Well, you know, players or players of FPL rather will remember Rose's impressive displays in yesteryear for Tottenham, and you know, he's still a player that has that experience to draw upon, and he had some attacking through balls which looked great, and it was just the price as well. So I think he's playing advanced here in this particular fixture. But Danny Rose is only 4.3 million, I believe. So let's just sort these alphabetically. Just a left-hand click will filter your data set here by whichever column you're interested in. Probably the quickest way to find him is doing it that way. So he played 90 minutes, which is good from a fitness perspective. And yeah, he's still 4.3 million, I should say. And those next two fixtures, yeah, they do lend themselves to potential clean sheets, I would argue. You're not expecting Watford to keep a ton of them, I would say, but that's a lovely price, isn't it? And if you're looking to really take money out of the defence, you know, the likes of Livramento at Southampton and Shane Duffy at Brighton and Danny Rose for me are options worth considering. Maybe we just need to give him a little bit longer to see whether or not that fitness can be retained. But good performance from Watford, played well, and despite Pookie's returns, I think Norwich are a team that are in all sorts of trouble, and the confidence has got to be desperately low. They were roundly beaten in the Carabao Cup as well. So, yeah, I suspect that will continue ongoing. Next up was the Villa game, which a 3-0 home victory probably wasn't what most people were anticipating. And the XG suggests that this was a much tighter affair than it played out. I'm not sure whether or not I completely would agree with that assessment, because the quality of the chances wasn't super high from an expected goals perspective. They, you know, Villa converted them clinically, and I think they were good value for their win. That said, before we get on to talking about the Villa options who impressed, I did just want to talk briefly about Damari Gray. Now, if we have a little look at the lineups for this match, that Everton side is not indicative of their full strength side, is it? We know that Begovic is not the primary goalkeeper. Pickford's been recognised as England's number one for a while now. They had no Seamus Coleman. You're looking at no Richarlison. There's no Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I'm not particularly convinced that Rondon is that fit at the moment as well. So it was a weakened side. So I wasn't necessarily expecting that much from Everton in this game compared to had they been at full strength, and kind of so it proved. But Damari Gray will have been of interest to people because of the way that he started the season. And in my opinion, I listened to this game rather than watching this game. Obviously, match of the day as well. But the commentary suggested that he was the most likely route for attacking returns, which is encouraging as well. So 2 shots in the game, 2 attempted assists. Average position was, you know, comparable with the Watford front three that we just looked at as well. So nice and advanced, I would say. Just want to have a little look at the quality of those chances, because one of them, this one was a decent chance actually, which he curled just wide. So I'm still encouraged by Damari Gray, and Everton's upcoming fixtures, which we'll take a look at in a moment, suggest I think he's worth a hold. I don't think you should panic because he blanked in this particular fixture. And, you know, probably no surprise with the starting lineup that Decore, who's attracted a lot of interest as well, didn't feature quite so much. His role probably wasn't quite what it has been thus far. I just want to take a little look. We just filter here on the BPS. It's really impressive, isn't it, from these Villa players? I just got my eyes just got distracted by Matty Cash there. We'll come on and talk about in a moment, but yeah, Damari Gray, I think he's still someone who we can hold with confidence. I'm going to take a little look at Everton's fixtures now as well. This is not a game that you want to be missing, right? If you are an attacking player, as I just mentioned, so we can expect him to get opportunities in that game. Tougher next run, of course, in the away at Old Trafford, and West Ham have been playing well. So that's still, I would say, absolutely fine. 3 games at home in the next 4. Watford at home, Norwich at home in the next 4 is enough for us to be confident in Damari Gray, I would say. Rondon, less encouraged by him as an option. I think they're going to need Everton are going to need Richarlison and DCL back as soon as possible. I just don't think he's quite up to Premier League fitness yet. And that's been evident in some of the comments I've seen directed his way on social media. Villa-wise, I thought Ings was impressive. So he's kind of become a bit of a forgotten man in the respect that he's been used as a make-weight to move to a more powerhouse attacking lineup. But I thought in this game he demonstrated, that he's got many different ways of potentially returning points. He was actually quite creative. He operated with Ollie Watkins. In this one, I just want to have a little look here at Watkins's minutes. Yeah, he did play the 90, which is encouraging. He's just come back from injury of being reintegrated into the side. And Ings similarly played 90, and they operated clearly then as part of a front two. So Ings was, I think, slightly deeper. Yeah, ever so slightly deeper, but it's a front two there. I thought it looked good. Look, it's quite hard to find way to include Danny Ings, but I actually think from a Villa output perspective, he may be actually more of an integral role for them scoring goals and linking the play from what I saw there. I think he's a great player. I really like Danny Ings. He started in my team at the beginning of the season. Only the one shot in this game, but he did look good and did seem part of that attack as well. Matty Cash is going to get a lot of attention. 3 shots is pretty much unheard of, right? I think this was his first goal for Villa. But he looked great and played really well. 5 million. I think Matty Cash is still at 5 million. Have a quick look here. Yeah, 5 million. So he's going to get a lot of attention, I would say, based on that goal and based on his performance in that particular game. I did notice, though, that if you have a look at his average position, it's slightly more inverted than we would have thought, perhaps. But it was an impressive performance from Cash, and it's a nice price point, depending on the makeup of your squad. And yeah, he's going to become one to look at. Matt Targett did not play well for the second time this season that I've been aware of. Yeah, he was hooked, wasn't he, and is now injured. So definitely Cash over Target would be the recommendation there. Even without that injury, I would still be making that recommendation. And the player who is just so exciting to talk about is Leon Bailey. Like he was actually really good when he came on against Chelsea, albeit didn't return, but just looked like he was already up to Premier League level. We've seen Jadon Sancho sort of taking his time to embed in the team, but Leon Bailey looked awesome. I thought he looked so direct. The delivery for his for the corner, which led to Luca Dean's own goal, was right on the money. He took his goal well. He's a really direct player, sort of with the ball as well, running with the ball. Looks like that will be a threat as well as I say, that dead ball delivery in. So 6.4 million is, like we talked about, is in that kind of price point that's around the Conor Gallagher, Ismail Assar, now Leon Bailey, as we mentioned here, Damari Gray that we've mentioned. Yes, it's a little bit higher, but I think he's going to become a player that we're going to focus on. I think he looks good. Like, it was a really short cameo in that one. In just 20 minutes. It would have been longer, but he went off with a knock, and just hopefully it's not too serious, and hopefully he's not an injury-prone player, because based on that performance, he looked like a definite FPL option to me. Next up, we had the Wolves match. Now, this will be quite a painful one for FPL managers to recollect, I reckon, because in good faith, people would have been looking to bring in Wolves players, both defensively and attacking-wise, in my view. They'd actually looked pretty good in spite of the results. And Brentford, I think, are still, in my view, wrongly being deemed as a targetable fixture. I've been impressed by Brentford, particularly at home. I do not think they are in any way, shape or form whipping boys. I think they're a well-organised side. They impressed me in the Championship last season. And so it's proved. They've started well. They look good. But still, this was a tough one to take from a Wolves perspective. They were pretty limp. I'm quite surprised that the XG is over 1, actually. We'll take a quick look at the players, or some of the players who've been attracting attentions. We'll start with Traore. who was, you can see, operating primarily, I guess, in that wide right area, and did provide an awesome centre from which Raul Jimenez headed wide. That was the one where he took off his protective headband after that. I wasn't happy with how the ball came off that particular chance. But yeah, Traore frustrating again. 2 shots, 1 attempted assist. This is kind of fine, right? Again, the statistics do lend themselves to suggest he's likely to be returning, but we've been saying that for like years, so it becomes a tune that gets more and more difficult to listen to. And you know, blanking in a home game against Brentford doesn't bode well, does it? Just want to take a little look at Jimenez. I mean, just looking at those players, they do have heaps of attacking options, don't they? With Semedo, it was a little bit wasteful the game before, but still looked attacking. You've got the double pivot of Moutinho and Neves as controls that midfield, and then all of these folks like Podence, Traore, Trincao, Fabio Silva left, so Hwang looks like an exciting signing, and Raul Jimenez, who's still working his way back from injury. It looks like there should be goals there, but you know, there weren't. It's a tough sell. Quite tight between these excuse me, shots, but none on target. That is profligate, isn't it? That's wasteful. So yeah, it's going to be hard to recommend any Wolves players on this performance, definitely. However, if we look at Brentford, the 2 who stood out were definitely Ivan Toney and Mbeumo. And I did find out that the average, if we just take a look at the average position of Toney here, who gave the Wolves all sorts of problems in this game, he really did run them ragged, particularly in that kind of inside left channel. But I'm not that surprised that the Mbeumo, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but his average position is more advanced. And I'm not surprised by that. That's how it came across in the highlights as well. If I have a look at the shots that he had, yeah, I mean, they're central, aren't they? One, you know, the tap in there, and the 2 slightly further out. But he looks like he's another one in that category, and this is a sort of recurrent theme, isn't it? That if I have a little look at his returns, 8-pointer in that particular game, and another one right around that 5.5 million. So there's a bunch of players early on in this season who I'm saying can be targeted and potentially moved in and out depending on how fixtures and form go. So I do think it's a price point that's going to be of interest and will actually enable money to be spent on more expensive players elsewhere in your team, and still super low owned in live teams as well. Their fixtures, it's going to be difficult irrespective, right? They're still, as I say, priced as a promoted team, still finding their way in the league and don't have a huge squad. But there are some ones that we would potentially expect some attacking returns in. So another player who looked good. Toney as well took his penalty really confidently as well. VAR seems to be have been tempered down a touch, I would say, on in terms of the interpretation for giving penalties. That said, being a penalty taker for a team in the Premier League is still obviously an attribute worth considering when you're buying your players in FPL, and he took his penalty really confidently. So I think Brentford are becoming a team that we can trust more and look to for options. And later on this video, I'm going to talk about their defensive options as well. Let's move on. Next fixture was the Burnley match. So Arsenal's new resolute defence, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but yeah, they kept a clean sheet here. It's an improvement based on what was a tough start. Obviously, they would have identified that away match at Brentford early doors as one to, or first up, I should say, to win. Obviously, I've just said that that's a tougher nut to crack than we would have expected, and then they've had a tough run post that. But this was a good win, albeit slightly fortuitous in the sense that Ramsdale did almost concede a penalty. I don't think it was a penalty, but you know, pretty fine margins there. From a FPL attacking perspective, I thought the sort of midfield trio was quite interesting. So Smith Rowe had a couple of price drops. He's sort of operating on that inside right-hand channel. 2 shots, it's fine. Average position, yeah, inside right. He looked good and looked like it was becoming more. There looked to be more of a relationship between himself, Odegaard, who scored a great free kick, albeit I'm not expecting those sorts of returns on the regular. I think he's a nice player. I was excited when he came in, but I do think he's going to be slightly more deep-lying and dictating the play a touch. We'll see. That's just my initial read. Clearly a great user of the ball, and he is another nicely priced option as well. 11-pointer in this particular game. Oh, look. Yeah, 5.5 million still. So another one in that range. Smith Rowe, 5.3 now, following a couple of price drops after that initial tough start to the season. And Saka operating on the left-hand side. It just looked like the three of them looked to be more cohesive and understanding of each other. And I thought there was some encouraging signs there. Defensively, I think Arsenal are still one that we can look to from a budget perspective. I'm not absolutely convinced that this defence is as watertight as people might be believing based on the most recent results, but it is improving, and Ramsdale looks to be the number one. Arteta's number one now. He's been signed for a lot of money. Leno played in the cup in midweek, and Ramsdale started in the league in back-to-back games now. So at 4.5 million, I think he still is 4.5 million. Oh, look there, 3 points as well. 3 additional points from the clean sheet. Yeah, 4.5 million. Terrific budget way in. There are other ones, though, as well. I was impressed by Tomiyasu in the game before. Operating on the right-hand side, we know that on the left-hand side, you've got Tierney, who's slightly more expensive, arguably more attacking. Ben White, as well, is another cheap option, is going to play, you'd assume, the majority of the minutes as well. So Arsenal, from a defensive perspective, look really intriguing. They've kept a clean sheet here in an away match against Burnley, and I read that this is the tallest back four that Arsenal have fielded since the 90s in the Premier League. Whether or not that's true, who knows? But yeah, it just seemed like they've actually got a bit of a strategy there to make themselves more resolute, and so it played out in this game. Aubameyang got some attention previously in the game before, understandably, but it didn't happen for him in this game, and he's around 10 million. I think he's 9.9 million now. I think I just saw this like this. Yeah, 2 points is not what you want. 9.9 million. North London derbies to come. I mean, it's hard to convince people to invest in that amount of money in the Arsenal team right now. I think there's much better options in the defence, and he was pretty quiet actually. If we take a look at the 2 shots that he had, you can see they were both outside of the box. Not what you're looking for. So I would not be a player that I'd be recommending. Didn't scribble anything from Burnley. I mean, right now I don't think there's a team that are particularly attractive to players. I'm sure there will come a time that they will be, but they've had a tough start, and they'll be looking to get some points on the board soon. The Man City Saints game was, if you look at that scoreline, it's not what you would probably have intuitively expected, and it was a pretty difficult one to analyse, I thought. Saints defended brilliantly. They really did. But they also created proper chances, and my read as well was that they would have created even more had sort of different options be taken from the final ball. They sort of fashioned opportunities, which wouldn't result in shots necessarily from the stats, but from watching the game, I started thinking that could have become more of a presentable chance on goal had they chosen a different option. So it was a really good performance from Saints. That said, I would not be recommending them from an attacking perspective. I think if you're looking to Southampton, it's more defensively. I mean, a shout out here. This is a decent, better than decent. It's a good ratio here. So, going away to the Etihad and conceding 555 passes is nothing abnormal there, nothing to be worried about there. But having 319 versus that gives you an indication of how in the game they were, and they were, and 10 shots is absolutely impressive as well. So it was a really strong performance from Saints. Livramento, I think, is the standout. Like, even in this match away at the Etihad, he's still got really far forward, as you can see here. Take a look at his average position. For a fullback at the Etihad, I'm encouraged by that. I think that's absolutely fine. I think he's probably still 4.2 now. Unless there's been an overnight price rise. Yeah, I mean, this is encouraging for sure. 4.2 million. He's owned in quite a lot of teams already, as you expect, right, at that budget, at that price point. But I really like their fixtures over October, excuse me. So, yeah, Chelsea away is about as hard as it gets at the moment. But beyond that, or either side of that, with Wolves home, Leeds home, Burnley home, Watford away, and Villa at home, it's targetable. And he looks like the best way in to that defensive line, definitely. City-wise, not much to say here that's going to be groundbreaking at all. Well, nothing groundbreaking, actually. I felt like it was a classic City performance, like lots of possession in the opposition half, created opportunities, but they're still missing that number 9. In this particular game, you had Gundogan and Sterling standing out from the highlights. I'm not sure I'd recommend either. Certainly not Raheem Sterling. It's priced too high to be spending that amount of money when you consider the alternatives at that price point as well. So, frustrating game for them. But look, another clean sheet. And maybe that's the lesson here, that the likes of Edison and Diaz, for example, are where you should actually be focused if you're looking for a route into the Premier League champions. And I wouldn't necessarily be recommending it right now with the fixture, their next fixture. Let's just take a little look. Yeah, if you were to say the next 2 fixtures are away at Chelsea and Liverpool, hard pressed to consider a tougher run, right? And maybe after that would be the time to target. It wouldn't stun me if that game was 0-0. There'll always be competitive affairs, won't they? But probably not the ones you'd want to be targeting to bring a player in. But another clean sheet for them, and that was probably the main positive from an FPL perspective in this game. In the Newcastle game, which was the Friday night game, this was so fun. It was almost like both teams had just accepted that they can't defend and just went for it. It was made for a really fun match. And I think there are FPL options here. I mean, St. Maximin is the one who stood out in the absence of Callum Wilson. He was just electric. He was all over the place. And look, yes, Leeds are a fun side with talented players, but defensively, I don't think they're particularly set up to defend well anyway, because they're so on the front foot at all times, and that does yield opportunities on the counter. And when you've got a player of St. Maximin's ability and pace, to me, it wasn't that surprising that he stood out at all. 5 shots is great, and he deserved his haul. Let's have a look. Does 8 constitute a haul? Maybe not, but it was a good return. It could have been more, and it sort of said to me that maybe if you're looking at St. Maximin as a budget-friendly attacking option, don't be too perturbed if there are fixtures for Newcastle in which you're expecting them to not have tons of possession, because I do think on the counter-attack he'll be a threat, particularly if he remains confident. So he was the standout from Newcastle's perspective. Rafinha was a doubt for this game, depending on what you were reading. He scored from a kind of speculative cross. Did create another good chance as well. That's fab, right? I mean, one shot that led to the goal. Hard pressed to claim that was a shot, really. I guess it went in, so you have to consider it as one. But it was still encouraging from Rafinha. I still think it's fine. He's another one in that price bracket. Feel like a broken record there in the midfield. So another one in that envelope of players, I guess, to be considered. I'm still super positive about his prospects. Bamford had 4 shots as well. Didn't really come across that way on the highlights of this game, but I think there's just about enough there to still be encouraged from a Bamford perspective. I mean, obviously you would have been targeted following Antonio's suspension and Dominic Calvert-Lewin being ruled out. So people may be slightly concerned, but I think if we look at Leeds' upcoming fixtures, the ankle injuries come to light recently. So he just didn't play in midweek in the Carabao Cup. Whether or not that was precautionary or just a rest and they badged it as an ankle injury, I don't know. But he's still at the 8 million mark. Transfers have been all over the gaff so far. It's more these upcoming fixtures. 2 home games back to back. West Ham, who have defended well recently and look like a good team, and Zuma's made them stronger. But I'm slightly wary that West Ham are going to run into some tiredness soon, having had the Carabao Cup victory, playing in Europe in that midweek to Saturday, or to Sunday, I should say, run. So there may be opportunities there, and it's just an attractive run, isn't it? If you were to look at that batch, I should say, of 6 fixtures, enough there to keep hold for sure, in my view. But yeah, fun game. Defensively, no, I would say if you've got the likes of Luke Ayling in your team, obviously he's having to cover at centre half at the moment, but Leeds are just concede too many shots from a team perspective, and we'll have a little look at that in some data later on. But if you're taking these players in, then I think you need to be accepting that they are going to be giving up chances, and those are going to, more often than not, lead to that clean sheet being breached. So you have to be hopeful for attacking returns instead. And if you're bearing in mind some of the budget players that we've talked about already, like Duffy, Livramento, for example, then it would probably be more of a recommend to be looking for them instead. So that was the full return or full suite of games that I covered on Saturday. I'm going to take a little look at the other fixtures as well. So I haven't done these from an analysis perspective, from an eye test, but we take a quick look at the Brighton game. So Leicester have given up a few goals, a few too many goals, a few too many chances as well, and there are still options there that are attractive from an FPL perspective. And I think actually the return of Johnny Evans, who played 90 minutes midweek, will certainly make them stronger if he can stay fit. Vestergaard's been signed as well. So I suspect that will improve. But Brighton are just impressive, aren't they? They've had such a good start to the season. I still think that it's you'd be hard pushed to find compelling cases for the attackers in this game. I still think that the defence is going to be where you're going to be looking instead. As said, these are the BPS points here are suggesting the attackers were good in this particular game, I guess because the defence was breached. But Shane Duffy would be the one that I'd be interested in here. So he's picked up a yellow card in this game, but yeah, look at that. Over a fifth of players are already owning him. He's now up to 4.3. Excuse me, he's 4.3 million at the moment, but that's still super cheap and super affordable. And yeah, how about that? Shane Duffy, throwback to the triple captaincy of yesteryear. Have a little look at their fixtures. Probably better away from home, certainly initially. It's actually a tough run, but he'd be part of a rotation strategy, I'd venture, as well at that price point. And Brighton look like they're having a good season, and Potter's a strong manager. So yeah, heaps to be encouraged about there. Leicester-wise, they're kind of an enigma right now. I don't think things have clicked quite yet for them. I still think their defence, as I say, I would expect it to improve with Johnny Evans coming back, and the options to supplement Soyuncu and Vestergaard with Evans will help them improve defensively. Schmeichel as well would be someone who would benefit from that. But right now, not much to be too excited about from a Leicester perspective. The West Ham game was interesting because of that final moment penalty that was missed by Mr. West Ham himself, which was frustrating if you happen to be a West Ham fan, which I am. But look, Ben Rama was probably was the story here. Again, he was one of those doubts beforehand, but I just wanted to take a little look at his returns or his output for this game. Thought this was quite interesting. So probably with and without the when West Ham were with and without the ball, whether or not he was required to drop deep initially and was picking it up there, and then more attacking further passages of play, further advanced. That was quite an interesting split there. But look, he impressed again, and they've got leads in the next game. 3 shots, that's actually fine for an attacking midfielder. Let's have a look at this average position. Again, more attacking than not. It's what you'd like to see from your midfielders, and was involved. creative, and looking like attacking output was still expected from him. So people were, I think, a little bit concerned when he got taken off early in the Southampton game. I don't think there was anything much to be concerned about there. It was just a tough assignment, and Southampton had defended well. So Moyes was trying to react to that, and he started the season really strongly and looks to be great option for FPL managers who've got him already, and for people who are looking to supplement their midfield. He looks like definitely a viable option. 10-point haul, can't be complained about. XA was over 0.5 though, so I don't know if people saw that. Owned by almost a third of managers. Wow, that is for live teams. It's getting to the stage where it's going to hit you hard if you don't own him. So that was the main takeaway from West Ham options that I think people would be looking to buy. I think defensively, as I mentioned, we're looking stronger. Zuma's come in and looked impressive, and they did defend well, albeit if you look at the Man United output here, 17 shots is a lot, especially in an away match. And look, lots of them in the box as well. So maybe my assertion that we played well, defended well, isn't actually borne out in the statistics, and actually West Ham are not quite as resolute as I would like to believe. But from a Man United perspective, this was more encouraging than we'd seen historically, like creating a lot of chances. There's still some uncertainty, I would say, about selection. Not from a defensive perspective. I think that defensive five, if you count De Gea of Shaw at left back, Maguire alongside him on the left-hand side of the centre-backs, and then Aaron Wan-Bissaka next to Rafael Varane, that looks settled. This central midfield pivot of Fred, who's just been shite for the whole of this season so far, and typically McTominay as that double pivot, seems to be Solskjaer's favourite pairing in that, but I'm not sure how sustainable that is, bearing in mind that the likes of Marcus Rashford is going to be coming back. You've still got Tony Martial, who was selected for France in the last international break. So who's going to be operating on the left-hand side? Can't see it being Paul Pogba. I think he's going to have to go back into that midfield, whereupon the question becomes like, who's going to play on the alongside of him? Do you trust Fred or McTominay to be that number 6? I don't know. I don't know what the options were. So there's some uncertainty there. Up front, Ronaldo, I'm absolutely convinced will play every minute of every Prem game that he's fit. I don't see that why that wouldn't be the case. So that's obviously something that people have acknowledged already. But there's just so many options for Solskjaer to choose from, with the likes of Greenwood, Sancho, Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, Edison Cavani. Lots of options there to concede and to consider. Jesse Lingard's come right back into the thinking now as well. So I think from an FPL perspective, that becomes more difficult to accommodate in your thought processes. But certainly Ronaldo will play the majority of the minutes, or I think will play all of the minutes as well. The others, I think, is a bit more uncertain, other than I think Bruno will always operate at number 10. Defensively, I hold out hope that Man United will start to see this more consistent back four resulting in more points. I still believe that that's likely. I just want to take a little look at that run, because they've actually had a really strong run, haven't they? See how they look with the upcoming fixtures. It's still good, I would say, for the next few. Then it toughens out after that when we hit game week 9. And I think if there are no clean sheets in the next 3, then people will definitely have looked to have abandoned ship, if they haven't already. Bearing in mind the options you've got with Man City and Chelsea. And Chelsea are going to be the last team that we come on to. So this was a game which was your quintessential game of two halves, wasn't it? At 0-0 at the break, and then Tuchel just proved what a great manager he is. He changed personnel, system in game, which is, I think, the true test of a manager's ability. And look at it, it's just they run riot, didn't they? In the second half, it was a completely different match, and they were thoroughly deserving winners. Another clean sheet as well for them, and I think this was just something that just leapt out at me. If we look at Marcus Alonso's heat map here. So Chelsea obviously attacking bottom to top. You know, you wouldn't necessarily know if you didn't know which foot he was. You wouldn't necessarily know from a fullback perspective, you know, which side was attacking. But look at this activity in the box as well. I mean, 4 shots, 52 passes, 4 attempted assists. Incredible statistics. They really are. The threat of Chilwell looms, I guess, but seems like he's got that berth nailed down right now. Let's have a little look at his history a moment. This run, this 3-year run here, there were some huge hauls in that. So a top return of 177, right around the 160 mark thereafter. Can we see a return to that? Not sure. I mean, the Chelsea getting clean sheets so often at the moment. And he's just an exciting player to own, isn't he? It's you feel like he's always in the game offensively when he plays. Like, will he lose out to Chilwell? Look, Chilwell's not going to never play again for Chelsea, is he? So you'd have to expect that. And there are more affordable options like Antonio Rudiger. If you wanted to be more secure of selection, Azpilicueta's a player I've always liked as well, and Christensen, who, you know, unluckily for his managers who brought him in the last game, missed out. So there's going to be some degree of rotation there, but it's hard to look beyond Alonso right now. Those stats are so encouraging and exciting as known. It wasn't Lukaku's day, you know. It wasn't for want of trying, and he's still going to return an abundance of points, I'm sure. But yeah, the Chelsea defensive behemoth rolls on, definitely. So that concludes like the run of stats from looking at the game week. In the last few moments of the video, I did just want to take a look at another feature, and this is the Optostat Sandbox, and just give a kind of nod to what I tend to think of as important when you're looking at your defensive players. We've just been talking about Alonso there, but I think the key that I start to think about, and wanted to try and encourage people to start thinking about, is to sort of recognise that clean sheets are a team level metric rather than individual, which is maybe your goal scoring or your assists, right? So from that perspective, the Optostat Sandbox is really cool to be able to target teams who are, or rather identify teams which are strong defensively. So you can toggle, so the default is players. There's a bunch of different options and suite of stats that you can take a look at, but you can toggle to teams, and you can look at retrospectively, or if you're interested as well, you don't need to look at the current season and filter your game week. Obviously, we've only had 5 right now, so not really interested in doing any comparisons between, you know, game weeks 1 through 2, and, you know, the second part of that little gap. I don't think it's particularly meaningful yet. So we'll just keep it on the whole season for now. This is quite a cool feature. You can unselect opposition, and the reason why I think that becomes powerful is if you're looking for your premium defenders, you'd be playing against any opposition, right? So performance against those teams is less important. The budget choice defenders, ideally, you would be looking to not to field against stronger attacking sides, right? So you'd use your fixture analyzer to identify those runs. So consequently, the thinking here, why this is important, is you can unselect opponents against which you wouldn't typically like for them to be playing. So for example, if you wanted to understand which cheaper defenders, how they performed against teams which are less likely to score against them, you could do that. And that's why you can see teams which are no longer with us in the Premier League, Bournemouth, West Bromwich Albion, for example. That's because you can look back at previous seasons if you want to. I'm going to look at per game stats. So the default is the total, but let's have a look at per game. And we're looking at teams here. And the key stats here are interesting. We can take a look at those potentially in another video, but I'm just going to focus on defending for now. And if we look at shots conceded, so this is showing the number of shots, or the average number of shots conceded by a team per game. If we look at in the box, filter, on that one. Unsurprisingly, I made the point earlier about Leeds conceding lots of opportunities in the box. Leicester have obviously played that tough game against Man City as well, so that will skew this a little bit. But it's the sort of thing that I would be interested in identifying. Obviously, Norwich, no surprise to see there. This is where I would be like, actually, is that a team that I want to be spending my budget defensive picks? Probably not, right? So if you flip that on its head and filter by the teams who are best, obviously no surprise here to see Man City yielding only less than 4 shots in the box per game. My assertion that Man United's defence is due for clean sheets is backed up by this, so that's encouraging. Wolves, like we said, was kind of a surprising result against Brentford, and there they are. They're Brentford. So again, not kind of surprised. So it does it does become quite powerful and quite helpful, I think, to be able to identify these teams, and then from that you can then look at your pool of players for those particular teams. I think it becomes quite a powerful metric. That's just one example there. Similarly, the FPL option here, suite of stats as well. I like looking at points. So if I do total instead and filter by those who've picked up the most, so it's telling me which teams have been awarded the most FPL points in the season so far. And I think you start to be able to see teams that you can identify for potential players to select from. And look, I mean, the top 4 here, I think that's about as secure a top 4 in the Premier League as we'll possibly ever seen. If that wasn't the top 4, not necessarily in that order by any means, but those 4 being the constituent parts of that quartet, then I wouldn't, I'd be stunned if that wasn't the case. So that's no great surprise. But beyond that, the likes of Brentford, West Ham, Brighton, and Everton, you can see that they are the teams that are picking up points. So it gives you an idea of where to look in those teams, be it defensively if they've been backed up by your analysis from a defensive perspective, or attacking if you've happened to look at the other end of the pitch. So really cool tool there on the Fix website, the Optostat Sandbox, and I do like toggling to look at the team level information for sure. I'm just going to flesh that out one little bit as well before we call this to an end, and that is on the custom stats builder. Basically allows you to build out your own tables, and you can make them private or you can make them public. I've been playing around on these for years, so you can see I've got loads and loads and loads of tables that I've made, 72 tables that I've made and changed and modified over. So this is one I made Blue Peter fashion earlier on this season, or before the season begun, I guess. Goal threat defenders. So I'm just going to take a little look at what I looked at and sort of show how this could sort of supplement your thinking. So if you were looking for defensive players who have a particular attacking output, this is what I would be identifying. So we'll focus on this season, all game weeks for now. So we'll look at the first 5, using all teams, using all opposition teams. I think from an attacking perspective, it would be fine to include all opposition teams. Only looking at defenders. I set a maximum to 6 million there. And these are the stats. So you've got a whole suite of stats that you can choose from, up to 15 you can pick. And it's completely up to you how you do that, how you augment your tables. And I'm going to update that one, and we'll take a look at the output, give you an idea of how this could help you as well. Cool. So let's have a little look at average per game instead. I think this table will actually take a little while to build, so it might just take a moment to complete. But effectively, I'll click wait on that whilst that's loading. Effectively, what you've got here, your stats that you've chosen become the columns, and then you can filter or sort rather based on those. So yeah, I'm going to do averages. And if we do shots inside the box average, wow, Laporte. So the sort of thing that I wouldn't necessarily have expected. Look at that, Shane Duffy. Nice to see there. Our favourite budget option there. Joel Matip as well is interesting. If you can keep that spot nailed alongside Virgil van Dijk, that's kind of encouraging, right? To be having 2 shots in the box per game. Yes, small sample size, of course. This will become more useful as the season grows and we get more data points, but it gives you sort of idea of the sorts of returns that we're getting from these players. Cancelo, Man City still super strong attacking, defensively. This is kind of what I was hoping to see. So we mentioned Brentford, didn't we, throughout this video? And yeah, 4.6 million. Great returns already, and I think they are they're becoming a team we can look to and trust more. Like, yes, admittedly, Liverpool is not an easy fixture. Of course it's not. Even at home where I said they've been stronger, but just kind of gives you an idea. You know, might be able to get on ahead of the curve. So yeah, it's a cool thing to do. I tend to make my tables public as well, but you needn't have to do that. Anyway, look, that will conclude this video. So hopefully this has worked. Apologies if there's been any kind of lag or any kind of sound problems. It's the first go I've had at doing this, so get your comments in. Let me know how it's come across, whether or not there's anything you particularly want to see, whether or not this format's useful. If you like the video, smash a like. If you like what you've seen, give me a subscribe. And thanks to the guys at fantasyfootballfix.com. I'll pop a link in the description so you can take a look at that site if you should so wish. And yeah, I shall see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.